Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks for putting up a fight on the last stretches. And before I actually start with my topic, I would like to ask who of you is running Google Universal App campaigns at the moment? Quick show of hands. So we already have a lot of experts here. And who ran Google mobile campaigns even before the forced transition to UAC? Okay, yeah, so more than half of you already are experts on the topic, so I can end everything here. You know how it's going. So anyway, today I'm here to share the experience of InnoGames with Universal App campaigns and also talk about like the journey that we took and answer the question whether we perceive it as a challenge or an opportunity. Spoiler alert, for us, it's actually both, kind of, because it was like a very painful process going through the whole migration and transition. And I would just like to open with a comparison between the performance that we saw in 2017 versus 2018. So we'll just take a look at the install volume because I'm unfortunately not allowed to share more sensible information with you guys. However, it should already speak for itself. So in 2017, we drove about 500,000 of installs with Google mobile campaigns, and we were able to ramp it up to about 1.2 million in 2018. So this is like a growth of 115%, and we were able to quadruple the revenue at the same time, just to imply that we didn't just spend more money and acquired more users. No, it was also profitable for us, and you will see some more details on the following slides. But before I get into detail about UAC, I would like to turn back time a little bit and just remember how it used to be back in 2017, in the beginning of the year, and just remember what type of campaigns we were actually were able to run with Google at that time. So we basically had three choices in terms of campaigns to acquire users with for the targeting. So the first one being search app promotion campaigns, which were usually very profitable, but quite hard to scale, at least in our case. Then we had the display app promotion campaigns, which were easier to scale, but not as profitable as the search campaigns. And the third type would be the YouTube app promotion campaigns, who really never worked out for us, so we didn't use them. We tested them from time to time, but traffic quality was always below average for us. So in the end, we really stuck to search and display campaigns. And now let's take a look at the performance and the install volumes that we actually drove in 2017 with this campaign mix I just described. So in this chart, you can see our install volume development month over month, and also the split by traffic source. So you will notice it's only search and display. As I just mentioned, we didn't really run any YouTube app promotion campaigns. And in the pink line, you just need to love this design our graphics team came up with. So the pink line is actually the RA in percent, which is the return on ad spend, our main profitability measure, and also our target metric for our performance UA campaigns. And the gray line, I hope you can see it, is the minimum RA goal, so it's like a benchmark. So what you need to know is that as long as the pink line is above the gray line, everything is fine, so we are actually driving profitable campaigns, and if the pink line goes below the gray line, we actually start burning money, basically. And as you can see in the beginning of 2017, campaign setup was stable volume-wise. It wasn't anything I would like to show around because it wasn't like a very huge setup in terms of install volume, but we were kind of satisfied with the profitability. We reached our target metrics, and but we still wanted to scale, obviously. So we wanted to do more with Google, and that's when we took a look at Google Universal App campaigns, because Google was really pushing this as a new product, like self-optimizing campaigns based on machine learning, based on Google algorithms. So we thought about it, well, why not give it a shot? And just a quick recap on what Google UAC is all about. So with UAC, the advertiser can set the optimization goal, be it like a CPI or a CPA, so cost per install or cost per action, which usually is an in-app event. You set the daily budget cap and also the bid, obviously. You also decide on the geo or geos and language or languages that you want to target with your campaign, and then upload a bunch of creative assets, text, video, and display. And these assets then will be used by the algorithm to automatically build the final creatives. So these are the things that you can influence as the advertiser. Things that you can't influence are the specific targeting, so you can't decide on which placement you want to show your ads. You don't get to decide on the final creatives, as I had just described. The algorithm will just pick whatever it likes the most and assemble a creative for you based on the assets you provide. And then you also don't get to see where your ads are delivered, so you won't know which specific search query triggered the ad for your app. And that basically makes UAC a black box type of campaign, as you're well aware of. So we don't generate any additional insights by running UAC, and we only get like the breakdown on the network level for the traffic sources. But nevertheless, we decided to give it a shot and started testing UAC from May 2017 on, and these are the results. So as you can see, RA immediately dropped for us from May on, and UAC started also delivering traffic from YouTube as a traffic source from June on, and we ramped up UAC up until August to have a big enough data set to evaluate the performance actually. But as you can see, the RA didn't really recover. We stayed on a very low level, so at that point we were losing money by running UAC, and in August we really made the decision to stop investing so much. We still wanted to continue testing, but not focus on it anymore, but wanted to reiterate our approach to the search and display campaign setup that we ran. And yeah, if you still remember, in August, it was also the time when Google made a blog post on the Google AdWords blog, and that blog post read, starting October 16th, all new app install campaigns created in AdWords will run on UAC. Existing search display and YouTube app promo campaigns will stop running on November 15th. Yeah, that was kind of a mic drop statement by Google at that point, and we were quite surprised, then scared, then anxious, then angry, and in the end we really weren't able to process this information at first. So they kind of made it mandatory to use universal app campaigns, where we didn't see any promising development so far, and would take the tools we had before away from us, also the information, the data we had away from us. So we weren't exactly happy with that solution by Google, and I suppose none of you were either. However, we still had the goal of scaling our setup with the Google mobile campaigns that we were running with. And after some back and forth and some discussions also internally with management, we made the decision to actually go all in and commit to migrating the whole setup to UAC as fast as possible to, for once, make use of a first mover advantage, and secondly, also build a data set that we could then use to optimize based on in the future when UAC would become the only available solution to advertise with Google. So we really came up with this migration plan with our Google Account Manager, and then from September on, we started to migrate our whole setup. And this is what happened. So we really went all in, as you can see, and we started driving a lot more volume. Also a lot more volume on YouTube, which is by far the worst performing traffic source for us, and is so up until this day. And you can imagine that it was quite challenging to also justify this outcome internally towards management. So we really tried different approaches. We used CPI campaigns, CPA campaigns, different in-app events to optimize towards. But ultimately, in these 2 months, well, the results were not really encouraging, to say the least. And we were at a crossroads at that point of time. So we either had to decide to really stop everything, and we also considered like stopping all UA campaigns with Google entirely, or to try and reiterate on our approach to UAC and find an approach that might work better for us. And obviously, we opted for the second option. Because when we looked closer at the data that we had generated in September and October, we were able to identify a couple of campaigns that actually showed promising developments. So in terms of improving traffic quality week over week. So we saw that retention rates for some of the users were improving, that rec-to-pay rates were improving for some of the users. And so we assumed that the algorithm was working for us in some cases. And that's some stuff that, once again, we discussed internally at length. And we came up with a short list of key findings and learnings based on the data we had gathered in the 2 months of September and October. And based on these findings, we relaunched our UAC setup. This time, in November 2017, we started on a much, much smaller scale. And as you can see, when we started on this very low scale, and we actually relaunched the campaigns in some of our core markets, and then started ramping up month over month, we immediately started seeing positive results. So we immediately started seeing a positive ROA. I will tell you in a second what exactly we changed in our setup. But one of the big things which you will also notice is that the blue bar is now missing. So we totally excluded YouTube from the traffic sources by not using landscape video assets anymore. And we also asked our Google account managers to deactivate the automatic video ad creation. So this really helped us, on top of some other adjustments to the setup, to get to a point where we're comfortably driving a certain volume while remaining profitable. You can see that profitability fluctuates quite a bit. However, we always meet our minimum profit goal, and therefore we were quite satisfied. And we also started to get a bit cocky in the second half year, because now we were at the point, oh, UAC is working for us. Let's find out how far we can push it. And that's when we started increasing budget caps again, putting up more aggressive bids, and adding some more geos to the mix. And this is like the scaling phase, as I would call it, in the second half year of 2018. And as you can see, we ramp up significantly up until October. And obviously the RA suffers because of that, which is perfectly normal. If you ramp up your UA campaigns, you will usually see the RA declining. And we got to the point where we were comfortable. We knew to which point we could actually push the campaigns while remaining still on a profitable level. And as you can see, we also started retesting YouTube as a traffic source. And fortunately, the algorithm already evolved to a point where it wouldn't allocate too much budget on YouTube as a traffic source. It would stop at the point where it realized that it can't reach the eCPA with the users acquired via YouTube. So, and then from Q3 on, as you're also probably aware, were not able to exclude YouTube anymore anyway, because portrait and video ad assets would also be used as YouTube video ads. So this basically sums up our journey. There was quite a few ups and downs in there. And I would now like to talk about the top 5 key learnings that, in our opinion, enabled us to scale to the current volume and scale the setup while also remaining profitable at the same time. When I'm talking about these 5 topics, I would like you to keep in mind that these are things that worked well for us. It's not necessarily the same recipe that works for everybody. However, I think that some of these things are still a good starting point to work with. So very first, learning when we experimented with different events to optimize towards Well, it's kind of obvious now that we are talking about it, but the purchase is the best in-app event to optimize towards in our case. And we also give a 30-day conversion window to the algorithm, so it can accumulate enough data points to actually find the right users for us. So that worked best for us. We tested tutorial completion, different retention events based on the time the user spends in the game, but none of these events worked as well as a purchase. Then the second is more about like the operational setup of the campaigns. So what worked very well for us is to set up UACs that target only one geo, one market, which allows us to allocate budgets more efficiently towards dedicated markets. So we don't run cluster campaigns or global campaigns so much, because this is just easier for us to put a certain certain amount of money on just one market and scale that market if we see good performance in it. And for the TCPA bid that we set, we started out quite conservatively in the beginning, but at some point we figured out that if we bid at least twice the actual eCPA, we will see more stable volume for the campaign and also remain competitive in the auction process at the same time. For the third point, it's not a real big surprise that of the 3 different networks that provide the traffic for UAC, display performs best. And if you take a look at the breakdown here on network level for 2018, search is still meeting our minimum profitability goal. However, it's vastly outperformed by display as a traffic source. And YouTube, well, I've already said enough about YouTube, I think. Well, the volume is quite low in comparison to the other 2 networks because we only started with YouTube in the second half of 2018. But up until today, performance is rather disappointing. So if you take a closer look now at the share of each network, at each traffic source, and really focus on display, then it's quite interesting to see that for display, at least in our case, 70% of the installs come in via in-app placements, and the remaining 30% come in via browse inventory, which is the premium ad inventory in the Play Store. There, the ad only consists of the app icon and the app name. If you wonder about where we got the data from, the placement reporting for UAC was available for about, a couple of weeks in Q3 of last year, and we were lucky to find it and pull a couple of reports before it got switched off again by Google. They are going to reiterate it and fix some bugs before they are going to make it available again. However, it was quite interesting for us to see that such a big share of the installs was actually coming from the Play Store for us. Then for the fourth finding I would like to share, it's about the assets. So the UAC asset reporting is kind of unreliable. Google says so themselves. But still, we see that text and Square Video assets are the main volume drivers. Well, we know, based on Google statements, that the information is unreliable, as I just said. Some of the installs might be double attributed to certain assets. So, for example, if you have a creative which consists of 2 lines of text, then the install generated by that creative might be counted 2 times in the asset reporting and therefore is double attributed to 2 different lines. And that would explain the high share of text assets that drive installs here. But even if you assume that you have double attribution in 100% of the cases, you still have about 40% of text assets driving the installs, which is still quite significant. And for the second most important asset, it's Square Video for us, and that's why we focus our efforts on reiterating assets and also coming up with new concepts on Square Video, since also some other marketing channels are profiting from that. And last but not least, one thing that worked very well for us And I have to say that it's not in line with the Google best practices, and our account manager is always getting angry with us if I talk to people about this approach to setting up UAC. However, it's something that worked well for us when we were in the scaling phase, so I wanted to talk about it. It's to run UACs where we only have text assets in place, so no display, no video ads. And this would basically allow us to reduce the number of variables the algorithm is using to find the best performing ad. So it would only use lines of text that you put in the campaign and then some App Store assets. And it's just our idea that it might help the campaign to perform better sooner than later, because we just reduce the number of different things to test and to try. And we actually saw good results for that. So we're starting out with quite conservative caps and bids, and then exploring new markets where we would then, if we saw the good results in the beginning, increase the caps and add the other assets so we could also generate more reach. And this sums up all the key findings that I had to share with you. I hope some of them were interesting to you. Maybe even some new approaches come to mind for your UACs. And I would like to close the presentation with the picture that I started with the chart I started with. So we are actually, although it was quite challenging, so it was a painful process of getting from Google mobile campaigns to a UAC setup that works for us. We really saw it working for us in the end. We are still not 100% happy with the limited amount of information that we get out of UAC, but we are quite optimistic that some of these things will change with the upcoming product features that Google is going to release in 2019 as well. And with that being said, thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open for your questions.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Thank you.